Okay, so yesterday, we have discussing about the embedded system components. I'll just do the revision for 2 minutes. What all we covered in the yesterday's class, like which are the main components in the embedded system. Like we have a processor. So yesterday we see what are the different types of processor in the embedded system, and that is the main component in the embedded system. Other than that, we require the external input and output devices also. So like there are actuators and sensors are there, and also we require the external communication interfaces. So that diagram yesterday I shown you all, right? So we are basically learning in detail what are the embedded system components. Other than the processor, what are the components you do have. Other than that, yesterday we have seen the memory also. We have discussed about the random access memory. Today we are going to discuss. Yesterday we discussed read-only memory, right? In that, what are the different types of ROMs are there that we seen, right? So today we'll continue with the next topic in the module 3. This is the last part that is there in the module 3, right? So we'll start here. Okay. So next is we are going to see the read-write memory. Read-write memory or the random access memory. So you know, for embedded system, random access memory plays a very important role, right? So basically it stores the data, but you can say that the random access memory is a volatile memory. That means when you turn off the power, whatever the contents that are there in the random access memory, it will be deleted, right? So here again you can do the read and write also here. You can read as well as write, but here it is a volatile. That is, when the power is turned off, all the contents are destroyed. Whereas the ROM is a non-volatile memory. The contents are not destroyed when you again on the machine, right? So here in the random access memory, there are classification you can see on the right hand side. There are three types are there. That is SRAM, that is a static RAM, dynamic RAM, and the non-volatile RAM. So again, there will be question, what are the types of the RAM that are used in the embedded system, right? So you have to explain about all the three random access memory concepts here, right? So we'll go to the next slide. So you can see here, this is a static RAM. So what is a static RAM? What is the concept that is used in static RAM to store the data, right? So can you see on the right hand corner, you can see here, these are the transistors. So basically transistors are also used as a storage device. They basically act as a flip-flops here. So there are total 6 MOSFET transistors are there. These are 4 and the 2 are based at the left and the right, right? So there are total 6 transistor MOSFET, metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. Basically this transistor, they store the data. So using this, the static RAM has been designed. So here they have shown typically a typical cell, only a single cell implementation they have shown, right? So now you can see here, the bit, the data will be entering on the one side of the transistor. So here it is acting as a controller. So whenever the data has to be stored, that time this first MOSFET transistor which is placed at the entrance, it will act as a controlling. If the data is there, then it will go on storing the data in this all particular 4 transistor. If the data is not there, then it will be off. So these two are acting as a what controlling the access, and basically these 4 will be storing the data. So SRAM is fast in operation, and also you can see the diagram here. This is a typical cell implementation what they have shown. So we'll go to the next one. You have a dynamic RAM. So what is this dynamic RAM? The dynamic RAM, again, it also uses the transistor, but you can see here a capacitor is there. That means the transistor is acting as a, whenever the data is there, it will just allow the data to enter. But who is storing the data? The capacitor is storing the data, which is acting as a charge. So earlier in the dynamic static RAM, you have seen the MOSFET transistors, they are storing the data, but here the data, whatever you are entering, that will be stored in the capacitor. But there is one disadvantage is here. What happens? The capacitor, if they are used for a longer time, right, what happens? It will start leaking. So therefore, it has to be refreshed periodically. Otherwise, the data storage will not happen. So that one extra operation is required here, right? And the refreshing of this capacitor is done periodically in the millisecond. So this is one disadvantage is there in the DRAM, right? Again, the MOSFET, the data is entering into the MOSFET. So whenever the data is available, it will enter into the transistor and the capacitor will start storing the data. So here it is acting as a gate. Gate means if there is a data, it will make the data to enter into the capacitor. If the data is not there, this will be off. So this is what the implementation, DRAM cell implementation has been shown here, right? Okay, so next we will see what is, there will be one question on the next part. What is the difference between SRAM and the DRAM cell? So you can say that the SRAM cell, it is, you just saw in the diagram, it is made up of the 6 MOS transistor, whereas the DRAM cell is made up of a MOSFET transistor as well as the data is stored here in the capacitor. But here in the SRAM, the transistor are storing the data, and here the transistor is acting as a gate here in the DRAM cell. And then what is the difference? Like in the SRAM, the transistors, they store the data, but refreshing is not required because there is no leakage in that. Whereas in the DRAM cell requires refreshing because the capacitor will, after every certain period of time, it will start leaking. So refreshing is required. And here it is a low capacity and this is high capacity. But coming to the cost, the SRAM is very expensive because you require more number of transistors. Because of the capacitors are used, which are, the cost is very less. So therefore it is a less expensive. But compared to the operation, the SRAM is very fast, right? And compared to the here in the DRAM, it is slow in operation. Why? Because every time the refreshing has to be done. Okay. Okay. Then the typical access time that you can see here, it is 10 seconds, whereas the typical access time, that means if you want to access the data, it is taking 60 nanosecond. So this is slow in the operation, right? Okay. So next we will go the NVRAM. What is this NVRAM? Non-volatile RAM. That is, it is also, the concept is based on static RAM only, but there is a minute battery backup is there. Suppose if the power goes, right, it should not be shut down or the data should not be accessed. So there is an external power supply backup is there. So here the non-volatile RAM is, you are having a static RAM plus the external power supply. So both are packed together in a single package, right? And the lifespan you can see here, it is around 10 years, right? Okay. So there will be one question on this. You just remember what are the different types of RAM that are used in embedded system. Then you have to explain all these three, right? Okay. So next we will go. The next component in the embedded system is sensors and actuators, right? So what is the sensors and the actuators? So basically the sensors, they are acting as a, they are placed at the input port of the embedded system. Actuators, they are placed at the output port of the embedded system. So best example for sensor and actuators, I want to give, take an example of air conditioning system. You know what is an air conditioning system? Basically, it controls the room temperature of the room temperature, right? So suppose what happens, suppose if you enter into the room and if it is too hot, right? So what happens, you take a remote and then you try to adjust the room temperature and try to make it cool. So how it is done? In the air conditioning system, there is a sensor is there. So that sensor, what it will do, first it has to check the surrounding room temperature. if the temperature is high, suppose if it is 30 inside the room, right? And if you want to keep it at 15, then first the sensor will sense the room temperature, right? So that sensor, what it is doing, it is taking the physical parameter and converting it into the electrical signal. So the data is taken, what is the surrounding room temperature, then it is given to the actuator. Actuator is nothing but, again, it is also transducer. Basically they will convert one type of the signal into the other. So here the electrical signal is taken and it is converted into the physical action. That means the surrounding temperature is high, so it has to adjust it to the room temperature of say 15. So actuators, what they do, again they are the transducer which will make the value according to the user convenient, right? So that is what you can see on the screen. If the embedded system is designed for any controlling purpose, the system will produce some changes in the controlling variable to the bring the control variable to the desired one. So here the best example I have given is the air conditioning system, which will be having both sensor and the actuator. So sensor and actuator plays a very important role in the embedded system. Like that, there are many actuators and sensors are there. We will see what are those in the next slide, right? So we'll go to the next slide. So even you can see here, the sensor, the best example is given on ECG machine. You know what is the ECG machine does? Basically, it tests the, to monitor the heartbeat patient, right? So how it takes the heartbeat of a patient? What they do, they have a electrodes, right? So electrodes are nothing but the sensors there. So these sensors, what they will do, the electrode sets, they will put it onto the body of the patient, right? And that patient's heartbeat will go on varying, right? So here the input is physical, and that whatever the input you are getting, what the electrode sensors are there, they will convert it into a electrical signal. And those signal, it is given to the monitoring device, like a display device, which will show you the heartbeat of a person. So the sensor basically sends the data on the based on the surrounding environment. Either it can be a temperature or it can be a temperature or the humidity. Yes. So there are different parameters are there, right? So sensor plays a very important role here in the embedded system. These are acting as a input on the input side of the embedded system, right? So here there is no actuator is there in the ECG machine. So some of the embedded system, both cannot be there, either sensor or actuator, based upon the designing. The sensor may be there or actuator. So in the example of a ECG machine, there is a sensor is required because you have to measure the heartbeat of a patient. But actuator is not there. Why? Because whatever the electrical signal is there, that it is displayed on the device. So there is no actuator here, right? So next we will go to the next slide, the IO subsystem. So what is this IO subsystem? IO subsystem, nothing but it is a both sensor and actuators are required for the embedded system to work, right? So which are those IO subsystem, other than what are the different types of the actuators or the sensor we have for the embedded system to be connected either at the input side or at the output side, right? So here you can see that sensors, one thing I want to tell you that the sensor cannot be connected directly to the embedded system. In between some, there are isolation circuits will come into picture, that is called as a optocoupler. We will see that is in the next slide. So next we will go here. Just see here, there are different types of actuators, yes, and some display devices which are used in the embedded system. So first we will see the light emitting diode, right, which is you have seen in most of the embedded system application also. 7-segment LED display, optocoupler, stepper motor, relay, piezo buzzer, push button switch, keyboard, and programmable peripheral interface. So these are the different IO subsystem. These IO subsystem may be either the sensor or the actuator. So first we will study the light emitting diode. So the light emitting diode is acting as an actuator, right? So the best example can be given when you go to the ATM machine. Yes. So what happens when you try to insert the card? What happens if you are not inserted the card properly? What happens? There is a green light will be indicated. So on the screen, and it will also display that the card is not inserted properly, and that green light will also start blinking there. So here it is, the LED is acting as a actuator, right? So actuator means it is want to tell the end user that there is some fault, or here it is used for to indicate the end user that something is fault in the system what you are using. It is giving an alarm for the user, right? So here you can see that LED plays a very important role in output device, which will see the visual indication. So LEDs basically they show the light. Either it may be the colors are red, most of the time red it will be there, or the green, right? So basically they indicate the presence of the power condition, like whether the device is on or charging of the battery, right? So there these are acting as a actuator. Actuator means they are showing the output whether the system is working correct or not. So how it is work? You already studied the LED, right? So LED is again the working. If you see below the diagram, it is made up of a PN semiconductor material. So again too, it has to emit the light. That means it is not made up of a P and N type semiconductor. Here there are gallium arsenide and arsenic. These are the semiconductor materials which are doped in P and N type. So what happens when you apply the current to the anode? So you can see the symbol here, the symbol of a LED. Why? What this arrow indicates? It indicates it emits a light in the form of the color. So you can see on the bottom, the diagram is shown the P type and N type, right? So the P type is connected to the positive, N type is connected to the negative. That means what happens? The material is made up of coloring, which is having the gallium arsenide and arsenic. When this is connected to the anode and when the voltage is applied, what happens? The light will start emitting. That time the light color will be either in the green or in the red, depending upon what type of material that is used in the P type and N type, right? So this is what concept that is used in the LED. So basically you just remember the LED, they are acting as an actuator, that is the output device which are connected in most of the embedded system. Next, you can see the 7-segment display. You can see the 7-segment display in calculators, you can see, right? So where it will display the digits, right? So again, this 7-segment display, LED display, it is also acting as a display device in most of the embedded system. The example I had given, the calculator in the earlier phone system, you have a, like when you are dialing the number, that number will be displayed on the screen. So there, the 7-segment LED displays were used, right? So again, they are made up of diodes. There are total 8 diodes are there. You can see these are one diode, A, B, C, D, E, F, G and DP. There are total 8 diodes are connected. So each one are used to display the certain digit here, right? And one you are having a decimal point. So basically they display the digits starting from A to Z and one decimal point. So again, how this 7-segment LED, what configuration they can use? They can use in 2 different configuration. The one is the common anode and the second one is the common cathode. That means all the anode terminals are connected together. That is the common anode configuration. All the cathodes, they are connected together. That is called as the cathodes. You can use any one of this configuration to activate the 7-segment LED display. So this is acting as a one output device, which is most commonly used in the embedded system, right? So next we can see here, just the example here they had given. It is used in low-cost embedded system like public telephone call monitoring devices, point of sale terminals. So sometimes where you want to display the numbers in some of the embedded system, even in the microwave oven, you can see the timings. Timings will be displayed in the digits. So there, the 7-segment LED displays are used, right? So this is acting as a one output device. Okay. So next we will see what is the optocoupler. So optocoupler basically it is used, the application here is what is it is doing as a isolation. That means you can see the diagram here. There is a one IO interface. that is where the LED is connected, and here it is a phototransistor. In between, there is no circuit connection is there, right? That means these two circuits are not connected, right? There is a isolation between the input and the output. Why these optocouplers are required? Basically, you can think of these are the stabilizer, right? So suppose you are having a TV, right? So what happens in the TV? Sudden, suppose there is a high voltage is coming. So directly, if it is connected to the TV system, there is a damage to the TV, right? So what happens? The stabilizer is put in between so that it stabilizes the whatever the input voltage you are getting. It should not be affected to the TV. So that in that way, if you think this optocoupler, it doesn't want to isolate whatever the input is there, that should not be affected to the output. So in that case, these optocouplers are used in the embedded system, right? So we will try to see this example where it is used in the embedded system here. So just see the below diagram. What you can see on the below here, there is a microcontroller. Yes. So there is a microcontroller here. This microcontroller basically acting as a core of the embedded system. Assume that to the microcontroller, it is basically an IC. So I told you that you cannot directly, suppose the input interfaces, some IO devices you want to connect to the microcontroller. You cannot connect directly to the pin. What happens? That may damage this IC, right? So what they have done, they have placed one optocoupler at the input side and one optocoupler at the output side, right? So this is acting, you can think this is acting as a stabilizer. Suppose whatever the input, suppose this port pin wants say that 5 volt or 10 volt something to be given, but suddenly at the input side, some of the input devices are getting high voltage, and that it will damage the microcontroller. In that, what they are doing, they are placing the optocoupler at the input side and the output side so that there cannot be any damage to the core of the embedded system. So basically you can see here what these optocouplers are used. They are used in suppressing the interference in data communication, circuit isolation, high voltage suppression. That means I just given the example here. The input pin should not be given the high direct voltage so that it will get damaged, so that it is suppressing the voltage. So how much voltage you want, that suppressed voltage is given to this particular pin. So in that case, the optocoupler, they are used in the embedded system. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. Then comes the stepper motor. Stepper motor is also an output device. Here it is acting as a actuator. So you must be asking where the stepper motors are used. You can see in the robots, right? Basically in the robots, what they do, whatever we give the command, based on that they will do the action, right? So basically they are used in industrial applications, right? Suppose a machine part has to be put in the industrial application. The machine has to put certain parts in the system. That time what this robot will do, it has to pick that part. That time this stepper motor are used in the system, right? So this basically the stepper motor is what? It is a DC motor, right? So here what it in the DC motor, you know that it produces a continuous rotation. Just you have to apply the DC voltage. Whereas a stepper motor, what it does, it does a rotation. So when you apply the voltage, based on that voltage, at what angle you want to move, right? The stepper motor will give the direction. Suppose I want to move 90 or 45 left or right. So that is possible with the help of stepper motor. Only thing you have to apply the voltage. Based on that, it will do the certain rotation with respect to the given voltage, right? So they are basically used in consumer electronic products and robotics. Robotics is the best example. I just told you, robot has to pick up a part. So either he has to, suppose give the example, robot has to move left side or the right side, or certain rotation it has to do. There inside the stepper motors are used. So here they are acting as actuators. That means they are controlling controlling the signal, and according to that it will be producing the certain output. Even you can see in the printer or the fax machine, they are used the stepper motor. What purpose they use? So when you put a paper inside the printer, what happens? It will take the paper inside, and based on, after go on printing, then it has to rotate it. Inside there is a rotor, or the sorry stepper motor is there, which will go on rotating that paper, and then it will start printing. So this stepper motor also are the actuator which is used in the embedded system. So there are two types of stepper motor you can see here, unipolar and the bipolar. So one experiment you will be doing on stepper motor even in microcontroller lab in the hardware part, where it is acting as an actuator which will rotate either in left or right direction. That one lab will be conducted when you join the college, right? So that time you can see the stepper motor, what is the application in the embedded system, right? Okay, next we will see what are these relays. So relay is also acting as a output device here. What is what it is doing? Basically we see that relay is a electromechanical device, right? So how it is made up of? It is made up of a coils inside. Okay, so when a voltage is applied, okay, when a voltage is applied to the coil, what happens? The current will start flowing through this, and it will also generate a magnetic field. Then in the magnetic field, you can see there is a armature core is there, that will move to the particular point. So what is doing here? The movement of the contact point or changes the power or the signal flow path. I'll just give an example where these relays are used, right? So relays basically switch the powers, right? Suppose in an embedded system, you want at the input side 220 volt, and later in the device you want to convert it into something like say lesser voltage. So the switching of the power has to be done. I don't want like a 220 volt, I don't want to apply to the next circuit in my design. I want to reduce it to say 120 or something. So there is a switching of the power has to be done. Who does that? The relay does. So relay basically controls the power, changes the power or the signal flow path. So in that case, these relays are used in the embedded system. Basically, they are doing certain control or the switching of the power in the embedded system. So you can see the how it functions. It works on the principle of electromagnetic principle. It is made up of a coil. So when I apply the voltage, what happens? Current will start flowing. Yes, that will generate the magnetic field. And this magnetic field, what it will do? There is an armature contact is there. Then based on the whatever the desired power you want, according to that, it will change the power or the signal flow path, right? So based on that, you are having a different relay configuration. You have a single pole, single throw, and single pole, double throw. This is just a diagram they have shown. This is how it is symbolically they have shown here. You have a relay coil, and it is open means. So when it is open means there is no change in the power. Whenever you want the certain change in the power, that time it is closed here, right? So these are the different configurations they have given for the relay. Next, you will see the piezo buzzer. What is this piezo buzzer? Again, I said this piezo buzzer also acts as a actuator. So I just want to give you an example of a smoke alarm, right? Smoke detector. So in most of the house, when you are not inside, suppose there is a smoke has happened and the alarm has to beep, right? So what happens in the smoke? Again, there are both sensors and actuators are installed. So again, in the smoke, what happens? First, it will detect the smoke with the help of a sensor, right? Then it has to produce an alarm. How this alarm is produced? Using the actuator. Here, the actuator they are using is piezo buzzer, right? So what is this piezo buzzer? It is acting as an actuator, right? So whenever the voltage is applied, it will start beeping. You can see the diagram here. These are, you can see in most of the houses, the smoke detector will be used. Like whenever there is a smoke is happened, immediately this will start beeping. Why? Because these are actuators. When the voltage is applied, suddenly it will start beeping, right? Again, the piezo buzzer works on the principle of it contains a piezoelectric diaphragm which produces audible sound in response to the voltage applied to it, right? So best example I had given here, the smoke detector, or the smoke detector means when the smoke is detected, immediately the alarms start beeping. That time the actuator used is a piezo buzzer. So what happens? The smoke, when it is detected, it is converted into the electrical signal. That means